current suffering is for future happiness,
Mm-hmm.
or current stress is for future rest.
Mm-hmm.
So there's an earning that we think we're doing. We think we're earning happiness, we're earning rest, we're earning satisfaction, we're earning the good enough status.
This episode is especially near and dear to me. And when I recorded this episode with Amanda, it was less than a month after I had lost my brother from the very thing that we are talking about in this episode. The stress, the fear around toxic success, and saying yes to everyone and everything before you say yes to yourself. And while it's still a healing process that's going on within me, I feel like I need to share this because it's so easy to think that it could happen to everyone else and it would never happen to you. And that's why I'm just so grateful for Amanda and her message and everything she shares in this episode, because we always thought that too. And unfortunately, my brother was 41 and he thought he had time. He had plans for retirement. And so the messages that come through this episode need to be heard and need to be taken to heart, because we don't know the impact of what we're saying yes to until it's too late. So please take this episode and really apply it to yourself. And again, I'm just so grateful for Amanda coming on and speaking about this today. If you've ever felt trapped in a job that you were very successful at, but left you feeling completely drained, you're not alone. There is a strong driving force within us that keeps us stuck, focusing on what could be lost if we stop. And it keeps us sacrificing ourselves in the process, and that's fear. In this episode, I have the honor of speaking with Amanda Moore Ortega, who understands this deeply. Amanda Moore Ortega is a certified professional coach who specializes in helping high achievers prevent burnout and find meaningful life balance. She guides clients through the inner work to create a life that not only looks impressive, but feels deeply fulfilling, in alignment with our soul values. She is a public speaker and workshop presenter working with corporate leadership teams, employee ERGs, trade associations, and other professional groups. She lives in Johns Creek, Georgia, with her husband, 3 boys, and 2 very spoiled Tibetan Terriers. Enjoy this episode. I know I truly enjoyed my conversation with Amanda. High achievement does not come without a price tag, and sometimes it's our health. If you're wondering if high achievement is compromising your well-being, take my free quiz in the show notes. Welcome back to another episode of Rewiring Health. Very honored to be joined by Amanda Moore Ortega. So thank you so much for being here.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here. Thanks, Kelly.
Yeah, so I've been looking forward to this conversation because there's just so many things I know that are going to come out in here that can tremendously help people. So what I would love for you to do, if you could just share your backstory and where you came from and what brought you to what you do today.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I could probably take the whole hour going into my backstory, I'm sure,
Mhm.
but just the cliff notes would be, I was raised by workaholic. My parents were both attorneys, they were both lawyers, and they had their own law firm. And so work was 24/7. It was a part of the dinner conversation. It was, at night, it was during the day, and it was just sort of the way that they operated. And so that was really my first glimpse into success and what success looks like. And I sort of hit a tragic period right around my teen years where my dad and my mom split up and my dad left. And then my mom got cancer. So she ended up dying 3 years after her diagnosis, but I was sort of left to raise my younger siblings in a sense. Um, and or just try to. I mean, I don't even think I did a good job, but I was left in that position. And when after my mom passed away, I was really more of a creative kid, and I really wasn't inclined towards the hustle. As I wasn't very ambitious in that sense. But after my mom died, it just all kicked in. It was sort of like, I'm not going to have a safety net unless I create it myself. I'm not going to have a home base unless I create my own home base.
Mm.
I just felt almost orphaned, even though I was 21, I just was I just felt almost homeless. And at that point, I became very successful. My professional career, was pretty substantial. But I didn't realize until later that it was really driven by fear. So fear of scarcity. And that scarcity fear, I do believe drives a lot of very ambitious people.
Mhm.
Sometimes there's something tragic in their history or a trauma, and that fear of being one step from living under a bridge is sort of feels very real for a lot of very driven people. And that was me. So that's really my backstory. And I think it was around 2016 I had my third child. I was completely overwhelmed. I was managing a huge technical project for a large telecom here in Atlanta, and I was unhappy. And it was sort of the first time I really looked at how I was successful on paper, and I was getting a lot of like praise, but yet I was miserable. So I was just starting to see that imbalance.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the skills or the tools to really figure out how to be happy. Um, and anyway, I it was then that I really wanted to get out. I wanted to get the golden handcuffs off, and I wanted to explore, something else. I went on a sort of a spiritual journey. At any rate, it took me years later. So it wasn't until 2021, which of course COVID was a catalyst for many people to become more introspective and kind of look at their lives. And I hit burnout. I hit burnout in 2021. And what's so funny is I didn't even know, I had never even heard the term the Great Resignation or anything. Like, and I wasn't aware of my thoughts, or I just didn't have a lot of those skills. All I knew is I just couldn't do it anymore. And it was tough. It was a physical, mental, emotional, spiritual stop. It just stopped, and I couldn't do it. Uh, I felt very dedicated. I was very committed. I was very passionate. People knew me as very passionate about what I did. I was managing two teams. I loved my teams. I loved my projects. They were strategic projects. They were, highly visible. We were, again, getting a lot of praise. And inside, I was just a mess and I couldn't go forward. So that's my backstory. I burned out basically, and ended up having to really force to do the inner work that now I feel like I'm equipped with. Boy, I wish I had had that before, but I didn't. And so what I did was I ended up studying everything I could about stress and burnout. I went back to school and got several coaching certifications. It's funny because I guess I'm still ambitious. I still, try to pursue, goals, but I wrote a book. So I wrote a book about my burnout experience, my journey, and some of the introspection that helped me recover. And being that I have a strategy background, I actually provided in the book some sort of processes or frameworks for people to go through that journey themselves if they so choose to. So I tried to provide that. So anyway, that's where I am, and that's really my backstory.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. There's so many things. I mean, I read your book. There's so many things I was telling you, like, I can so relate to that. And it's like you live your life in autopilot. You identify as this person that continues to do things, and you don't even realize what it's costing you in the long run. And so many people get stuck in that. And I know you coined the term toxic success, and
Yes.
it's so true. It's like you're successful, everything looks perfect on the outside, and then yet inside it is just that inner turmoil, like, how do I keep this going? It's like being on a treadmill that's going way too fast, and you're like, I
Yes.
can't fall off, but I have
Yeah.
no choice but to keep up this pace, and
Yes.
it's
It's like
it's
then you have a mortgage, and you have your lifestyle you've got to
yes.
maintain, and it just feels like you could lose it all. It's just such a fearful place to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. I know you talk about that scarcity. It's like so many, especially the pandemic, there was such a and even before that, there's so much scarcity that's sent around our culture that, like, you do more and more and more so that this doesn't happen. There's fear, there's so much of
Hmm.
that. And like you said, if you don't have the tools to manage that and manage your thoughts and your emotions, like, it can really take over.
It
tremendously.
does, yes. And
Especially,
it's culturally, it just seems rewarded. Like keep
that's
going,
it.
the hustle, go, go,
Yes.
go.
Yup. There's actually a sentence in your book I highlighted, and do you mind? I'm just gonna read it because it, like, when I read it, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like literally hits it the nail on the head. But you say, though it often goes unnoticed, many people who appear successful suffer internally. It's not uncommon for high achievers to feel anxious and unsettled. Support is hard to find because achievement at all costs is culturally encouraged. And I'm like, yes, that's it. Like, it is. It's like at all costs. It does not matter what you do as long as you produce, you get the numbers, you hit the project.
Yes.
That's it. I don't care what the cost to your health, your mental, emotional, physical, spiritual well-being. It does not matter as long as the numbers are getting hit. And it's so
Hmm.
true in so many aspects of life. Um, do you mind diving into that? Like
Yes.
these things that are going on in our culture that are promoting this, and so many people are getting stuck in that trap and the golden handcuffs.
Yes, absolutely. And what I think I realized is
Mhm.
that when we are in performance mode or an environment where performance is the focus, it's well-meaning, right? A business needs to have KPIs, OKRs, all the things, right? And that's what makes the business run. So there's nothing uh, innately destructive about that for the business. But what happens to us internally is it's sort of like the rat with the pellet. We start to calibrate externally,
Mhm.
and so we start to, over time, it's interesting because the more successful we get, sometimes the more miserable we get, which is
Yeah.
so not why we go after success. We don't go after it to be miserable, but we keep on getting rewarded for external performance. And if you look at advertising and all of the things that reinforce that, especially for women, is
Mhm.
the not good enough, and if you just had this you might be good enough message. That's an undercurrent of our culture, so that's surrounding everything, right? Then you've got the calibration. So we're calibrating externally rather than calibrating internally. So over time, we do lose an innate sense of self-worth. We lose the knowledge that there is any worth to our uniqueness. There's any worth to, our life, the spark of our life. Like we were born for a purpose or for a reason, and there's a value to our lives and our uniqueness, and we that starts to become completely eclipsed by external performance in our own eyes. So we
Yeah.
we lose our own sense of value. The other thing that I would just say that defines toxic success for me that I realized was the belief in the trade-off, the belief that we have accepted that current suffering is for future happiness,
Mm-hmm.
or current stress is for future rest.
Hmm.
So there's an earning that we think we're doing. We think we're earning happiness, we're earning rest, we're earning satisfaction, we're earning the good enough status. So
Yeah.
we think we're earning, but we're really just on a treadmill that never ends.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
so the more years we are involved in that, it is sort of, it makes a lot of sense that we would then be less and less happy because we're getting farther and farther away from valuing our true selves, if that
Yeah.
makes sense. And there really isn't, at least in my world, I really didn't ever hear a lot of messages, or I didn't tune into a lot of messages about valuing my uniqueness.
Mhm.
And I know I write about this in the book too, is the origin of our beliefs. Our parents are also well-meaning, but they don't want us to suffer. And they think, if we're artistic or creative or enjoy a calmer pace, they worry about us because they want us to be successful and have, the income that we need. And it comes from a well-meaning place. They want us to not suffer. But a lot of times we're steered away from our true selves, even by caregivers and parents early on, right?
Yeah.
So there's a
100%.
lot working against us. And burnout, I feel, saved me in a way.
Mhm.
I still have a little negative inner voice telling me it was weakness or I couldn't keep up or there was something insufficient about me. So I still hear that, I see that.
Mhm.
But I truly believe if I hadn't burned out, I could have much worse could have happened. And the actually the year after I burned out, I lost two very significant colleagues who were really significant. One was my boss who had hired me at the company where I was working when I burned out, and the other was a longtime client from my consulting days. Both extremely significant in my life, and both of them died within that next year, within 6 months of each other. And it made me think about how we often like this earning thing that I was talking about. So where we believe like we've got some of us have a retirement countdown app on our phones, and we've got the minutes and we got it down. We think we have a plan. So we think you know, it's almost like money in the bank. I'm going to suffer, 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 but there's going to be this day and I'm going to be happy,
Mhm.
right? And I think the problem is, I think what I realized too is that no one is waiting at the end of my life with a trophy.
Mhm. So true.
And right, and we're all
Yeah.
on this one-way trip together. We
Mhm.
really are. We're all on the shared journey together, and it's a one-way trip. And really, everyone's just a peer, even if it's a manager or a mentor or the president, or, some people seem more significant. So their opinions seem more significant about what we should do, parents. But really, maybe we're all just, maybe the should messages all just come from inner criticism
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
fear.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
so, like, calibrating to other people's fear might be what we're doing,
Yeah.
right?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I literally like could rewind that and pull out so many things from what you just said. Like everything resonated with me. Everything you said there, it is like that moving line. Like you think you're going to get to the finish line, and just when you're about to get there, it goes another 10 feet. And then you never get there. It's just,
Mm-mm.
and then that paying your dues. I can't even tell you how many times I have said that in my life. Like I just got to pay my dues and then things will work out. It'll get better. It never did. It just got worse. No one's looking
Mm-mm.
out for you. It was just, yeah, you just continue to push and push and push, thinking that exactly what you said. At some
Mm-hmm.
point, there'll be a finish line. You'll be happy. It'll all be worth it. It doesn't work that way. But yet we
Mm-mm.
all get shrouded in that idea. I've experienced it. Closest people in my life have experienced that. Like
Yeah.
it happens, and it is. I like what you said at the end there is it's like we're living off of other people's fears and what we should be doing versus listening to our own internal voice. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know if you experienced this in your life, but like did you find that internal voice was so clouded and quieted down because of everything that it was almost hard to
Yes.
find it when you
Yes.
escaped all that?
Yes. It's
Yeah.
definitely clouded. And I do like to think of it. Analogies work for me because I think all this stuff can be very abstract, but I do like to think of it as an operating system.
Mhm.
So it's interesting. So you just said something that really made me think, oh, operating system. Instead of it working as we finally get the reward, what ends up happening is we become a learned behavior. And that learned behavior is what is driving what we're doing, right? So the caffeinating up in the morning and getting out and hustling and then coming home at night and having to come down from all that stress. So that becomes a learned behavior, right? And when people get to retirement, they often don't know how to sit still
Mhm.
because we
Yeah.
haven't learned the behavior of listening to that quiet inner voice or being in nature or being quiet or being still. We don't value that as a culture, right? So we don't value stillness, or we don't believe that quietness has a value, right? So even if we kind of believe it or we read books about it, we don't practice it because we don't innately believe it. We truly believe that stress is the fuel of success.
So true. Yeah.
Caffeine is stress, really. I mean, after two
Yeah.
cups, you're just putting cortisol into your veins, actually. So 2 cups are fine. I do drink coffee. But you know what I'm saying is that excessive cortisol that we're
Mhm.
actually using it like an IV. We're using it to fuel our lives
Yeah.
a lot of times, and it is a belief.
Mhm.
And that's what I really want to say, that is I want to challenge us, because what's clouding our inner voice a lot of times is our own beliefs.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
and I didn't know. So I didn't know before I burned out that I had beliefs that I needed to challenge.
Mhm.
I didn't really understand all of that, right? So
Right.
as an operating system, I think, I do try to write in my book about a new operating system that you can operate your life from, and you can still be ambitious. You can still have goals, but the virus in our operating system is the negative self-talk,
Mhm. Yeah.
right? A lot of it is, right? And then the fear, right? So the fear, write about the negativity bias, which unfortunately, here's another thing stacked against us. Our
Yep.
minds are wired to focus on the negative.
Exactly. Yeah.
Ah.
Yep. Yeah, it's all about that protection, and it all comes down to wiring. We almost become addicted to the stress in our bodies, and when it's not there, it's uncomfortable, and that's why it gets really hard for people to escape that trap, because a lot of times we view discomfort as, oh, this is the wrong path. I shouldn't feel
Uh-huh.
like this. And so when we try
Yes.
to rest, we're like, well, I'm more uncomfortable resting and trying to quiet my mind. I'm actually more comfortable just being stressed out and goal oriented and focused. And so it becomes this whole flip flop where our nervous system is supposed to be in this rest
Yes.
state 90% of the time, but we're in
Yes.
stress state 90% of the time.
Amen. I just got
Mhm. Yeah.
goosebumps, but yes, it is so true. And I like when I was reading about stress,
Mhm.
I was looking at sort of nature, right? So like if you
Yeah.
think, and I say this to my clients and they're often like, what is she talking about? But I'll say, imagine the watering hole in Africa. Here we have the
Yep.
lion over here, we have the antelope over here, and they're both just chilling out and everything. And then they both like there's the chase, right? And that's when stress is useful and
Mhm.
necessary. They need that.
Yeah.
Both of them need it. One of it needs to run and the other needs to eat, right? But did you know lions actually rest, 21 hours a day?
Mhm.
And the
Exactly.
joke, the joke I always throw in there is that the lion rests 22 hours a day, the lioness rests 21. So
That's funny.
he's
That's
the hunter. But
yeah.
but it's interesting what you just said is so true, is that we've got it flipped. We've
Mhm,
got it flipped where it's stress, 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 pocket of rest. And
mhm,
it's supposed to be rest, stress, 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 rest, pocket of stress. And stress is actually this useful tool. I actually just did a video about this yesterday. If you think of it as like a little fuel capsule that's in a backpack on your back,
mhm,
and stress awareness is definitely a really big step for anyone that feels like they're on the burnout train, is to first, as they say in AA, awareness is the first step, right? So what I like to do is say it's a fuel pack, right? And it's on your back, and it's useful. It's a gift. Like we have this fuel pack so that if we get a car accident or something happens where we need to jump up and like the hustle is a thing. We need it in pockets. But think about that backpack you're wearing and think about like, it's not supposed to be open all day. It's
mhm,
just not supposed to be open all day. So like think about when is it necessary. So like oh my gosh, it's been 2 years for me noticing stress in my body and asking myself, do I need it right now? Is it fueling what I'm doing right now?
mhm.
And
Yeah,
usually the answer is no, you
right.
know?
Mhm.
Anyways, so fascinating. And
Yeah,
how have we flipped it? It's just crazy, but it's so
yeah.
wonderful when you can realize it,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah, and going back to the
Sorry,
lion and the
yeah.
lioness and the antelope, also, like, the antelope also has coping mechanisms. So after they've been chased, if you ever watch them, they do a shake, they have different physiological processes
Oh, wow,
to get
yeah.
themselves back into a state of parasympathetic response.
I
So
did not know that.
yeah, they have a whole so if you ever watch that, after they
Okay.
have processes that allow their system to go back into a restful state. But think about us as humans, we maybe get cut off in traffic. We have this huge sympathetic stress response. And then instead of, okay, shake it off, I'll move on my day. What do? We
Let it
tell our friends,
ruminate.
I can't believe that happened. We flip them off, we curse them out, we talk about it. And we're just staying in that state that we never allow ourselves to come back down. So it's like, again, we then change our behavior to continue the stress response because there's
Oh my
something very
gosh.
addictive about it.
We
And
love
so
stress. We
we
love
do.
it.
Yeah. As a society, we are addicted to stress, but just like you said, culturally it's supported. So you think that you're doing the right thing because
Mm-hmm.
if I'm stressed, I must be on the right path. It's almost like this is how, again,
Yes.
subconscious messages. You think that you're doing everything right, but it is not serving you in the long term. It's those short-term gains for long-term compromises.
Very much so. Very
Yeah.
much so. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, just helping people with this is so fulfilling for me now.
Mhm.
Um, and I do find myself working with a lot of leaders, which is great because guess what? Stress is contagious,
Yep.
right? And leadership sets the energy and tone of work culture.
Hmm.
And a
Yeah.
lot of times leaders are coming up in the ranks through this fear, through, motivated by fear, motivated by stress. And when they get into a leadership position, there isn't a lot of support for
Hmm.
becoming a positive influence, which is really what a leader needs to be,
Hmm. Absolutely.
or being a calm influence in the storm, right? Like you don't want the captain of your ship or your surgeon to be stressed,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So leadership itself, I I love it when I am blessed with the opportunity to sit with a leader who wants, well, I would say sometimes it's from perfectionism, they want to do the best job, but when I can have the opportunity to have a conversation with them about getting their talents out of the work and thinking about the energy that they're bringing to their teams
Hmm.
and what kind of tone they're setting.
Yeah.
And some people would call that executive presence. Executive presence is a happy byproduct of actually operating from your higher mind,
Hmm.
I think. So I think that if we get out of that reptilian mind and that fear based, the watering hole chase, the survival, the which, it's funny, I'm sure you're aware of this whole thing called the promotion effect, where your stress actually increases by something like
Hmm.
10% when you get promoted.
Yes. Yep.
Everything's working
Hmm.
against us, right?
Right.
But to think about that and to think about how, imposter syndrome and all those things that happen when we get promoted,
Mhm.
if we can fill that space with access to our higher mind and learn things. And one of the best skills I feel like I love teaching people is, I think of it as self-coaching, is curious observation, neutrality. Like,
Mhm. Yeah.
gosh, how restful is it to feel neutral, like about the person that cut you off in traffic, to
Hmm.
actually give yourself permission not to feel anything about that and
Yeah.
just put your brakes on and let them in, like let crazy happen.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, that sort of shift to, I don't have to feel everything. I don't have to react to everything. I can actually be sort of a curious observer and a participant in my own life at the same time. So that's that higher mind or that self-coaching.
Yeah.
Wow, I wish we were all taught that.
Seriously, it's such a skill, and it's like, I didn't even learn this till my 30s. It's like, I wish I had those skills in my, earlier years because life would not have been as challenging if I had those skills,
Yes.
and it's so true. It's like we have such dis disorganization, dysregulation in our systems that we're just trying to survive ourselves. So for us to empower people, especially in like a leadership position, is like it feels overwhelming because you can't even be a leader in your own life. How are you supposed
Yes.
to lead people unless you're in harmony, unless you're
Right,
regulated?
right, right,
And
right.
yeah, it all comes from like a place of like, if you can be compassionate and show yourself love, then now you have more to give other people. But
Oh, yes.
trying to give from an empty tank and
And that's
expecting it
what
to
we're
work.
doing.
Yep.
Yes. That
Yeah.
giving from the empty tank, that is, and I know that your perfectionist listeners know what that feels like,
Yes. Yeah.
you
Because
know?
you're trying to juggle 10 balls, you can never let one drop, but yet it feels like, how am I supposed to do all this? Yeah.
Yes.
Spreading yourself
Yes.
thin.
Hmm.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah. And one thing I just want to circle back to
Yeah.
burnout because that's
Yes.
something I would love for you to talk on about. How do we start to recognize those signs of burnout before we're like burnt out? Because
Hmm.
so many people may be like, I feel this way, but it's not burnout. I'll just keep going. They excuse it or just keep on putting their head down and grinding. How do you start to pull back the layers, see yourself from a different perspective so you can recognize some of those signs of burnout?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. I think that like I said, it took me so many years. So like
Mhm.
I feel like, I just couldn't let go. I couldn't let go. That's why they call them the golden handcuffs. They really are, they keep you in
Yeah.
there. What I would say is one answer might be this. I know a lot of therapists and a lot of coaches use the wheel of life, right? So when you look at the wheel of life, do you know what I'm talking about, right? Where it
I do.
says like
Yeah.
finances,
Right. All the sections.
relationships,
Yep.
family, and
Mhm.
physical health. So you've got this picture of this wheel. Well, I think this is maybe helpful for the burnout. I used to think balance was juggling all of those areas of my life, or having the right to not have all my to-do list be in the work bucket, but have also a to-do list in my volunteer at the school, and do church stuff, and be in my community and travel. And so it really, because I was a type A high achiever, I was actually approaching every area of my life from that same,
Mhm.
how you do anything is how you do everything,
Yeah.
right?
Yep. All or
And
nothing.
the
Mhm.
funniest example I can ever think of when I make fun of myself or laugh at myself is hosting Thanksgiving. I was like, no, you can't bring stuffing. I make the best stuffing, and
Uh-huh.
I have the moistest turkey. And it's so, so I, not competing with people, but sort of creating the perfect thing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, so toxic. But it just shows that it's not just about work.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
I think burnout, first thing I think we need to look at is maybe you aren't burning out on work. Maybe you're maintaining, but you're at the center of that wheel of life.
Mm.
And if you can look at your own mindset and approach to everything you're trying to pursue, are you on the burnout train? Are you taking the approach of never enough,
Mhm.
perfectionism, being hard on yourself, being self-critical? So going inward.
Mhm.
There's
Yeah.
nowhere else we can go to find that answer. And when we go inward, if we can, with support, with a coach or a therapist, or, good friend, spouse, but get your support network. It's important to get support, and not just do it alone. If, being feeling isolated and feeling alone is not going to be the way we heal. We really, getting a lot of the stuff that we think is in the darkness and is only us, and we might even feel ashamed of, getting it out into the sunlight is how we realize it's just the human experience, and that
Mhm.
everyone's experiencing
Yeah.
kind of the same thing. So that support, that external support, is actually super important.
Mhm.
But I think it's the going inside and going, how am I approaching things? What's my mindset and approach to my life?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's where we can find the answer of whether we're burning out or not, because you can burn out as a stay-at-home mom. You can burn
Mhm.
out, you know,
Yeah.
I easily could have burned out if I was never a stay-at-home mom, but if I had been, I would have been a type A stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
It
Oh,
was how
absolutely.
I was going out into the world. So I think looking at how we're showing up, and then seeing that there are other opportunities, and I'll say this too. When I work with clients, I try to, okay, they have goals and I respect their goals, but I'm not the type of coach that helps you meet your goals. That's really not the type of coach I am. I'm the type of coach that helps you build awareness, and to create little experiments
Mhm.
and real life. Like, go and experiment with this new way of approaching things and see if the world falls apart.
Mhm.
See
Yes.
if there really you end up living under a bridge or not. If you actually take a calmer approach to certain things, or if you have a meeting with difficult people, how does it feel to sort of observe and feel neutral and less reactionary and less triggered? Practice these
Yeah.
new ways of showing up and see what happens. Because I think we do, it's irrational, but I really pictured myself under a bridge with a shopping cart. I did. I had that in my mind when I was driving myself so hard. It's
Yep.
totally irrational, but and I just didn't have, like I said, the skills to really believe in myself, or
Mhm.
to believe that I could scale back and I didn't have to be, the cause of all the success of the company, or it didn't all rest on my shoulders, or the world wouldn't fall apart if we missed a goal, or right.
Yeah,
Uh,
100%.
does that help? I don't know if that's
Yeah,
helpful,
no,
but
that was great.
yeah.
And I love it. It's such an actionable step too, and just a great perspective to look at things differently. And that's one thing I like about your book. There's a lot of those like questions to ask yourself to bring awareness to that, because when we ask questions like, why does this always happen to me? Why am I in this position again? We get those answers. But when you start asking yourself better questions,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
start getting better answers. So that's what I really love. And just what you shared about the wheel of life, like it's a really great way to change your perspective. And the experiments
Mhm.
I love, because it is so true. It's like, oh, we can do things differently. And the brain loves evidence. So when you experiment, you get evidence. You're like, oh my gosh, the world did not fall apart. The project still was successful and my health is doing better. Wow, this does work, you know?
Yes, and maybe
Yeah.
I can start to little by little in those proof points that you're talking about,
Yeah.
actually shift my definition of success to include my own well-being.
Totally.
Could
Yes.
that happen? Could we possibly create space for both ambition and well-being?
Right.
I don't
Exactly.
know. It's a question. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's hard, but can we
Yeah.
shift our culture? Can we actually be co-creators of a new culture?
And that's really, it's a combination of like shifting it within ourselves, but then as we shift in ourselves, we have that ripple effect that can change the culture. And that's really what it is. It starts with you and what you
Hmm.
can do. But yeah, I mean, I think that's really the question that needs to be asked. Like, are we achieving success in ourselves and outwardly? And how do we combine those two? And
Yeah.
it's so important to ask that question, because we can again see the external success, but what's the cost of that? And often we don't realize the cost until we have the health condition, until we are, not sleeping at night time and time again, until we start feeling it. And
Mhm.
yeah, and that's not really acknowledged right now in culture. It's just do it at any expense, just like how we were talking in the beginning. It's so true.
Yeah. And I mean, and the people that are telling us to do it at any expense are the same people that could lay us off tomorrow. So
Right. Yeah.
how much of that do we want to hand to them?
Mhm.
And I know we still want to do a good job and we want to have, the financial success. I think it's just like if we can come back to who we truly are, and that is a deeper process than just reducing stress. I think
Sure.
we're talking about a lot of topics, and it
Yeah.
could feel overwhelming the way we're saying, oh, reducing stress and changing your mindset and all these things. But I think knowing our true selves is such a gift that we can give ourselves.
Yeah.
I do like to think of the values that are okay. So we have these learned values that we've learned to value.
Mhm.
I used to value excellence, and I'm not saying I don't anymore,
Mhm.
but it's not, there's a set of values that are below those learned values of achievement. I valued delivery, man. I mean, if we didn't deliver on time, my stomach was in knots because it was violating my identity. It was
Mm.
this, I know, it just,
Mhm.
poor me. I was so stressed out all the time, but I was it's very driven. But below those learned values of achievement, there's a true self in there. Like I often like to think of it this way. There have been billions of people before I was born, and there will be maybe billions after. How crazy is it that there's no two alike? There's no two alike. And in this one little, on our tip of our finger is this pattern that doesn't ever duplicate.
Yeah.
So in this system we live in, there has to be a value to uniqueness. There has to be. It has to be valuable because why would why would that be? Why would it be like that, right? So going inward and kind of feeling, and this is where feelings we're also told are not valid, right? So thoughts are valid, feelings aren't. Well, I've kind of flipped that where I
Mhm.
kind of trust my feelings a little more than my thoughts because now I realize
Yeah.
how destructive my thoughts can be because they
Mhm.
can be based in fear and, like you said, protective. But my feelings can be a real indicator a lot of times of what I'm aligned to genuinely, correct? So
Mhm.
so understanding like my what I call soul values, a little bit woo-woo of a name, but it's the soul values are really just they don't change very often. I mean, we might shift them around a little bit and that can be a creative process, but it's so rewarding to get to your top six values and then look at your life. And to me, that's better than having the wheel of life and going, I want eight things in this bucket and 10 things in that bucket. And I want to be, the class
Yeah.
parent and I want to be the executive and I want to do all these things perfectly. Rather than that, if I can make a wheel of my top six values,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
know, then, for me, faith, abundance, creativity, connection, freedom, and empowerment. Now I've gotten to the place, I call it the V6, like the V6 engine. They're like cylinders, right? And I can run my engine on those rather than on
Mhm.
stress. And now it's fun to go back and go, oh, I'm spending time doing this thing and look at all the values it's aligned with.
Mhm.
That's how I prioritize things now. It's a different way it gives you a new framework,
Yeah.
if that
Yeah, I
makes
really like
sense.
that. And you
Yeah.
have the activity in the book, which I really like because it gives you a North Star. Like you can deviate, but are you coming back to your North Star of where your life is going, what you want it to look like? And I really like that. And it feels just so less overwhelming. You said like
Hmm.
all these little things you have to try to keep going, but it's like when you go back to your values and you really start to learn yourself, it really you start to see what you resonate with and what you don't. And again, like you said, it's not an easy process by any means, but if you don't start right now to start to learn yourself, then
Hmm.
you're only setting yourself up for the same trajectory that you're on, and
Yes.
doing a huge disservice to what really, again, your soul wants out of this life and the purpose that
You're
you're here
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That is so
for.
true.
Yeah.
Yes. And there is a lot of support out there. I do want to say, I think, and this is for the listeners who are out there thinking, wow, that's such a departure from the way I'm living my life. How do I start? Where do I start? There, if you start tuning out a lot of the negative noise, identifying it because it's out there, it's in the media, unfollow some of those sources of, angst or whatever, and start to tune in consciously to there's a world of people like you, people like me, messages, they're there. There's a frequency you can tune
Absolutely.
into, um, and you'll start to see it, it'll start to come to you, like retreats that are available, and coaching programs, or books. If you like audiobooks, I like to walk around the neighborhood and listen to audiobooks. I feel like now they're all on similar topics to this, and
Yeah.
you can start to fill your mind with these messages, and that can carry you. It's like a new current that carries your life.
Yep.
So it's
Yeah.
not all about, it's funny because I bet some of your listeners could be thinking that this is a new way to be perfectionist about something, right? Like now I'm going to be
Yeah, over the
successful at
top.
doing this inner
Yeah.
work. And
Yeah.
we all could be, and that's all of us, right? Everyone.
Yeah.
But instead, just maybe kind of just like you said, be in the silence, practice listening to it,
Yeah.
give it value. I think it's just giving value to our uniqueness is where our true self-worth comes from. And we can still perform. And I think performance, if we can get it to where performance measure only that one thing. So it measures your performance in that job, okay, but it
Mhm.
doesn't measure your worth
Right.
as a so kind of it's an identity shift. It's almost like, okay, I have this, here's my work persona, but I am not necessarily that, right? Like
Yeah,
like I like
absolutely.
to do the two lists. One is who I am, and the other list is what I've accomplished.
Mhm.
There was definitely a recent time in my life where I could have filled out the second list very, very easily. What I've accomplished. Who I am probably would have been just like a little scribble of a cloud. Like I don't
Yeah,
really know what I would have put in that
right.
column. And so like this journey of filling out column A is worth it. It's
Mhm.
worthwhile. And it's where our worth really resides, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, honestly, it is such a differentiator. And again, an actionable tip to someone who's listening, start there. Maybe you fill out
Yeah.
those columns and give yourself grace. It's gonna be whatever it is, but it's gonna give you information of like, okay, wow, I don't know who I am. I just know my accomplishments, and that's
Right.
okay. It's
Yeah,
just information again that you can take and use.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love how you say that it's just information. And that's that neutrality.
Yeah.
Oh, when I sit still, I realize I feel restless. That's interesting. Rather than the inner beating ourselves up, or, that it is interesting. It's good information. It's
Yeah.
just data. Yeah.
Mhm.
So
Exactly. Yeah. Absolutely. I feel like we could talk all day
I
about this.
do.
There's so many things. Like we literally just scratched the surface, but just for the sake of time, and I just
Yes.
want to kind of wrap things up. But I do want you to talk about your book, and I was going to show it here.
Yeah.
But Definitely a good read for anyone who is, a high achiever, struggling with some of these things we talked about. Highly recommend it. It was absolutely just, it resonated with me so much. And again, there's actionable things that you can do to start moving yourself forward. So you mind just talking about that a little bit?
Yes, I mean, I'm thrilled with it. It's short, it's a quick read, I think, right? I mean, did you
It
feel like it
is.
was a pretty quick
Oh, it
read?
was. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. And I think it's like I want to make it clear that too that the golden handcuffs on the cover doesn't necessarily mean the book's about quitting your job. I did quit my job, but I also go into corporations and do a lot of speaking. And I am not trying to get everybody to quit their jobs. That's not what I'm trying to do. But it is sort of, I do want to invite people to escape the toxic success trap.
Mhm.
I think
Absolutely.
that's all I'm trying to do. And I think we can be ambitious. Like we said, we can be ambitious and we can learn, and it can actually benefit our work life. If we can
Mhm.
access our higher mind and we can be comfortable with our true selves, we can be comfortable with our imperfections. There's even things I haven't put in the book that I use in my speeches, like, to fight perfectionism. If you spend time in nature and you look at all the trees and you kind of look at them and go, oh, imperfection is actually built in to the system. It's actually on purpose. It's not like bad. It's actually imperfection is part of the beauty. And just try to rewire your mind. I think that's all I'm trying to do with the book is give people a way to, if it is moving from act one to act two professionally in your life, the book will help. But
Mhm.
even if you're not ready to let go, I have plenty of clients who are, still getting the promotions or staying in the the fast-paced work environment. They just want to have their mind right and they don't want to live in this stressful state, right? So
Absolutely.
it'll help either way, I think. The book will.
Yeah.
I don't know if you agree, but
No,
yeah,
I
I think it'll
completely
help
agree.
both
Yeah,
ways.
I really enjoyed it. It literally like captured who like I can relate again so much to things you say in the beginning. And then what I like the second half it was those actionable steps, just things to start thinking differently and not feel like you're so stuck in where you are right now. So yeah,
Yes.
I completely agree. And for someone
Yeah.
to connect with you, where can they find you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm right now I'm on Instagram. I'm at Beyond Balance underscore coach is my Instagram. My business is called Beyond Balance Coaching. I'm also on LinkedIn. You could just look for me. I'm Amanda Moore Ortega. I do like to connect with people on LinkedIn as well. And there's, if you go to inwardtoupward.com, which is the book's URL or website, there's actually a soul value assessment you can download. It's a PDF download, but you can download it. And then maybe that could be a first step for some people is to go, grab a cup of tea, sit in your favorite chair, print it out, and just start to see what comes up and highlight your top values and go through those steps. You don't have to start at the beginning of the book. You can start at chapter 9, which is the soul values chapter. And that can be a great start, but yeah, and I love to hear from people too. So like definitely if people want to reach out to me, Amanda at beyondbalancecoaching.com, you can email me. But yes, I love to talk about all of this and connect with people. So yeah, that would
Yeah,
be
I love that, and I'll make sure everything is in the show notes too, so if you're
sure.
listening, definitely check out the links in the show notes, and I just wanna thank you again for being here. This has been such a great conversation, and just I know it will benefit so many people. There's things that I know someone will take from and just start to think differently. It's the first step to rewiring their brain, so
Yay. That's what I want
you.
to hear. So
Absolutely.
wonderful. Kelly, thank you so much for having me
Oh,
today.
sure. Yes, my pleasure. And again, for anyone listening, please, if you found value in this, share it with someone else who could also find value. There's going to be things in this that everyone can take and move forward with their life. So definitely share this episode. And again, thank you all for spending your precious time with us. Hey there. Thanks for listening to this episode. I hope it serves you well to start rewiring your brain to create the life you desire. If you found value in this, please share it with a friend and tag me on Facebook or Instagram at Dr. Kelly Kessler.